Hello again, and welcome to Life Skills presentation of the human being spectrum. And today we're talking about managing unacceptable or challenging behaviours. And this is something that can be a feature of the autistic part of the human being spectrum, but it can be a feature of the whole human being spectrum as well. So the topics today are understanding unacceptable and challenging behaviours, and some examples of challenging behaviours, and the actions that you can take to change unacceptable and challenging behaviours so that the person's life works better. And there's a SMART, remember SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time manageable. And it's very useful and indeed in some cases absolutely essential to have a SMART behaviour management plan. So what is unacceptable behaviour? Unacceptable means behaviour that is not acceptable in a variety of settings. I mean, we all know about those sort of behaviours, like people who pick their noses in front of people is just not acceptable, and we have to learn that very early on in childhood. And challenging behaviour is an unacceptable way of reaching acceptable goals. So you might want something and not be able to say that you do want it or how to say how you want it. And instead of being able to say something, you just stamp your feet and scream or throw yourself on the floor and roll around, and nobody knows that you want the drink or the cake or the biscuit. All they see is your tantrum. So it is an unacceptable way of reaching the goal of having a cake or a biscuit or a drink. So we have to make sure that communication is in place that avoids the tantrum and allows the person to communicate the acceptable goal that they want to achieve. The results of unacceptable behaviour can be, over time, devastating on somebody's life. So other people don't find people with challenging behaviour particularly nice to be around. They're a bit scary. You never know how they're going to react. So it can leave you sort of isolated, and other people don't relate to you very well at all. And so you don't build up friendships. And remember the emotional needs that we talked about earlier. So the sense of belonging, the sense of love, fun and intimacy, security, autonomy and control that works, all those things, sense of competence and confidence, all those things get sort of diminished by unacceptable behaviour. You become socially excluded, and obviously your emotional needs are not being met, so your quality of life becomes poorer for it, and it reduces the range of positive life chances available to you. And obviously all those things, because your emotional needs are not being met, lead to mental health problems, and that is on the rise. So it may not be because of challenging behaviour, but because this can be a cause of mental health problems, it needs to be addressed. So let's look at an example of an unacceptable behaviour that I came across in a child that I worked with in the child's home. He's a 3-year-old boy. He had no speech, and he would climb on the kitchen chairs and worktops, open cupboards, get a cup, go to the fridge himself, get a drink. He could do that all himself without any communication with his parents. He could just there was fruit on the table, he'd get foods at any time. Apart from the health and safety risks of climbing on wobbly chairs and onto worktops and opening cupboards so that you're leaning back with the possibility of falling off the worktop, there are numerous health and safety risks that I'm sure we're all aware of in a scenario like that for a 3-year-old. So he was putting himself at risk all the time, and also not connecting with parents about his needs. He was cutting out the middleman, and he wasn't learning those essential communication skills that we all need in order to achieve acceptable goals of getting the food and drink that we want. And he was cutting out the skill, learning the skill, developing the skill of making social connections with others, because that's where it starts. It starts with you have the human need. I don't know whether you know about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but if you do, you'll know that one of them is to have food to eat, to sustain your existence and keep you alive. So it's a way of having important social connection. If you remember, sitting around a table eating isn't a great way that human beings learn about connecting with each other, giving eye contact, taking turns, doing good listening, doing good speaking. It is very important to have those eating experiences as social experiences and developing the emotional connections with other people. And so obviously failing to learn all of those above skills was a result of this little 3-year-old boy cutting out the middleman. He didn't learn any of those methods of communication. He was totally alone in his activities, and there was no social meaning or connection attached to them. It was just, I want this, I can get it, I will get it, I don't need to connect with other people at all. And in that way, he didn't learn about social hierarchies. He didn't learn that the big people were there to keep him safe and teach him what works in life. He was in the position where he knew how to get what he wanted. He was in control. There was no need for connection, and he didn't get, the natural course of connecting with the adults in charge who keep him safe. And as an adult, if that continued, he would be unable to fit into any normal, flexible environment. So it's absolutely essential that his way of getting those needs met was, what can I say? It was diverted away from this action, this type of being that didn't work, into a way that does work, into the way that people normally develop their communication skills. And if he didn't have it, he would, as an adult, and I think this is so important to remember, that if you allow a child to just carry on doing that and not connect with other human beings to get their needs met, as they're older and bigger and stronger, they would require a highly secure, highly structured environment to scaffold their lives. And this does happen. And I've been to places where children stay 52 weeks of the year because their needs for this kind of intervention are not met early on. So we need to identify the behaviours that need to be managed or adapted. And here's some examples. A child who jumps on beds, upholstered chairs and sofas. Now, I know that all children do that, but when you have a child who has a diagnosis of autism, you cannot allow them to do that because their brain takes on that you can keep doing it, and that, if it's not adapted, then it can continue into later life when they are bigger and stronger, and it's harder to adapt that behaviour. And so that behaviour becomes an unacceptable way of reaching an acceptable goal. The acceptable goal is to have fun on a trampoline. And so you have to say to yourself, would this behaviour be acceptable when the child is 18? And as an autistic child, you have to be trained at an early stage, as I said, not to do this. And so there has to be a rule. And the rule is only jumping on the trampoline, no jumping on chairs, beds or sofas. And children with those sort of communication, socialization difficulties and flexibility difficulties, they're affected by being on the autistic part of the human being spectrum, and they find it harder to change as they grow up. So you have to teach it early on. So how do we manage to change these unacceptable behaviours? Well, you have to teach it in a way like a SMART target. Identify what you need to change and ensure that the child's unacceptable behaviour will adapt positively. Remember SMART targets: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant and time-bound. And a 3-year-old, like the one we talked about just now, who cuts out the middleman, he needed to learn the skill of communicating with the adults in charge of him. In this case, his mum and dad and his granny and granddad on both sides, who were involved in his care. It requires practical visual aids, so food pictures. They can be pictures like that, or probably better still, actual photographs of the food, and laminate them so they can't be torn up. And even if they're taken in the garden and trodden on, they can still be wiped clean and used again. They're attached to a choice board, so the child can choose the drink they want, and they take it to the adult to show the adult what they need. This is a form of communication. They're not cutting out the middleman. The environment itself needs to be really managed, so all the doors need child locks on them and constant monitoring when the child is in the kitchen, so that no food or drink can be accessed without an adult being involved in the communication to achieve that. And remember repetition 1,000 times before they get it. It is the key, alongside consistency of action and language. And there we are, communication difficulties. You need it repeated 1,000 times before you get it. That is research that says that. And sometimes it has to be more than 1,000, but the minimum of 1,000 times to learn that skill. And the child's team need an agreed and written plan of positive action to be achieved. Now, if you've got a team around you and everybody's doing the same thing, the 1,000 times is going to happen more quickly and more often. Here is a possible structure for a SMART target, for a behaviour plan, and you can see, you can put the child's name, date of birth, the date the plan was set, so you can mark the progress. You can name the people involved. They can be the parent, the teacher. If there's a social worker, you can involve the social worker. There needs to be a risk assessment as well about the child's behaviour, because that's very important. If the child's behaviour entails risk, it has to be written down, because people have to be aware about the risk. It's a big motivator to get people to work together to change the behaviour into behaviour that works. So you have a box there for what the behaviour is. Then beside it you have a box to write what action will be taken. So like in this case, the behaviour was helping himself to food, climbing, and the risk assessment will be climbing on chairs and worktops, getting access to glassware, chinaware, knives, and so on. So that's the risk assessment. So the behaviour is getting his food without adult interaction or making requests to adults. So the action is ensure the kitchen is safe, locks on all the doors, child locks on all the doors. The chairs needed to be attached to the table in some way, so that he can't move the chairs to climb on the worktops. There needs to be constant monitoring of the child in the kitchen. Really, initially, the child must be monitored the whole time in the kitchen. So those are actions. The language used is in, and another action is to, and you might need to occupy 2 or 3 spaces on here. Another action, under action that is, another action would be to create a choice board of the child's favourite foods and drinks so that they can go to the choice board and pick the thing that they want. Now, initially, the child may need hand over hand or physical prompt to go to the choice board to select what they need, to help them point to what they need. So that may be essential in the action used. And the language would be show mummy and daddy, show mummy and daddy, and then the pointing. And when the child picks, is happy to pick what they want, then you give the child what they want in exchange for the photograph. There is a program called Picture Exchange Communication System, which I do recommend, which is behind this kind of behaviour management plan. It is also a way of teaching communication, which is essential if you want to change behaviour anyway. And that has to be agreed, that plan. I'll go back about that because everybody, as I've said before, has to agree to use the same plan. That's why it's important to write it down so everybody knows what the behaviour is that they're working on. They know what the risks are. They know what the actions are, why the actions have been taken, and they know what to say in order to achieve what they wish to achieve over time. Remember, it's a SMART target, so it is time bound. And the language needs to be consistent and clear. I know, we've said this before, but it is absolutely key to this kind of structured way of working being effective. And acknowledgement and praise for compliance. Good listening, well done. And giving rewards if essential. Very early on in a process of changing a behaviour, you need to give some tangible reward that has meaning for the child. And it could be a small part of a jelly baby, or it could be a small piece of crisp, or a small piece of biscuit, or it could be a sticker. It depends what motivates the child. Also, offering choices at a later stage when you have better communication with the child has better communication with you, you can offer choices. Remember, choices are knowing what the child's powerful motivator is. So you can choose to, and you wouldn't expect to do this with that 3-year-old boy because his communication wasn't at that point yet, but at a later stage, you can offer the choice. You can choose to show mummy what you want and have a piece of jelly baby. Just a minute, I'll go back there. A piece of jelly baby. Oh dear. Or you can choose not to show mummy and have no jelly baby. So show mummy jelly baby, not show mummy no jelly baby. What do you choose? It's a good thing to use your hands because they provide a visual focus for the child. So if the child chooses, for example, not to show mummy, they don't get a jelly baby. You must keep your word about the outcome of their choice. So here's another example of choice. You have to get the child's attention. This is absolutely key. Even if the eye contact is only fleeting, it changes the quality of the connection, of the communication. So good looking, remember, get the child's attention. So let's choose another poor child, not John this time. Mary, look at Angela. Don't say look at me because everybody's me. Look at Angela or look at mummy. You can choose to do the homework and have your favourite TV programme, or not do the homework and have no TV programme. And you don't say it in a cross voice. It's set in a neutral voice. It's like offering a choice. So if Mary chooses to do the homework and have her TV program, then you praise Mary. Good choosing, Mary. That's brilliant. But if Mary chooses not to do her homework, then she's chosen no favourite TV program. She may have a tantrum or meltdown, and the adult says when Mary has calmed down, I can see you chose no TV program and you are upset. When you're calm, we can talk. Now the thing is that you can't communicate unless there's a level of calming down. So you need a little bit of calming down before you say that. But notice it says, I can see you chose no TV program and you are upset. So the whole thing about giving choices teaches responsibility. What you chose is your responsibility. The outcome is your responsibility. And so this whole thing of choices not only is connected to the way the brain works in connecting the emotional brain to the rational brain, which is what we all need to calm ourselves down, but it is also teaching your actions have a strong element of responsibility on you. So it's giving them power, in a sense, to experience the outcome of their own choice and the responsibility for that outcome. Keeping to your word calmly about the outcome of the child's choice is absolutely key to the child developing responsibility for the choices they make. So valuable, so valuable. And remember, we all need to be playing the same game. There's no point in being on a big pitch playing field when some people want to play soccer and the others play rugby. There is no game, there are no winners, and there is no fun, and nothing is achieved. So it's very important to be playing the same game. So the summary of what we've learned just now is understanding unacceptable and challenging behaviours. We've looked at some examples of challenging behaviours, and we've looked at the actions to be taken to change unacceptable and challenging behaviours and how to write a smart behaviour management plan. So thank you very much, everybody, for good listening. I didn't notice any challenging behaviours out there. Thank you very much.